Our clergy have spent much of the last 2 months since the shutdown being in communication with you. We agreed early on that our primary focus would be on as much personal and group communication as we possibly could manage. And thus, between our clergy, we've probably spoken with many hundreds of you over the last couple of months. And one of the truly heartwarming responses that I get personally is so many of you ask me, how am I doing? And I'll tell you, I'll be completely frank with you. I'm sick and tired of these tablets. I think I'm suffering from a previously undiagnosed disease called screen fatigue. All these little boxes on a screen, euphemistically called gallery view, as if this gallery view, these Hollywood Squares boxes on a screen, can actually replace a real live gallery with real live people who are coming together for one real live united purpose. At first, fine, it was a novelty. I learned a lot of things. And in many ways, it allowed us to, and still allows us to, stay connected in an incredible way. Imagine how much worse our situation would be if we didn't have this modern technology of being able to zoom in on your families and to touch you in some way. But these squares on a screen, euphemistically called gallery view, causes me to yearn for the real thing. A real live gallery of worshipers in the sanctuary, a real live gallery of toddlers in the preschool, a real live gallery of hundreds of religious school students, a real live gallery of B'nai Mitzvah celebrants, all rejoicing, live, face to face. Now, don't get me wrong. In my conversations with you, I'm touched and moved that you tell me that our efforts online actually does make a difference for you. That really, really pleases me. A little insight into the rabbinic personality. We never know in normal circumstances whether people listen to us and how often they listen to us and how deeply they listen to us. So for us to receive feedback that, in fact, we are making a difference in your life, that means something. That means a lot. We are so uplifted by your response in this way because rabbis, essentially, the worst thing for us is being ignored. If you criticize us, if you disagree with us, even if you don't like us, oh my gosh, it's far better to be criticized and even disliked than to be ignored. I subscribe to that rabbinic dictum. Criticize me, disagree with me, just don't ignore me. Now, that said, even though so many of you have been so generous and kind in your responses to us, let no one be under any illusion. Synagogues are not in the online business. That's not what we do. There are other enterprises who might lend themselves better to being off-site, to being online. And in fact, some businesses we're reading about in the newspaper, some businesses actually discovered that they can do better off-site, that their employees prefer to be in their home offices, and that they can actually save a lot of money doing that. And they think that they might develop these new practices in the future, even when the pandemic is behind us. That's good for them. That's not synagogues. We are in the face-to-face business. We need to see you. We need to touch you, to embrace you, to bless you and your children, to hold your hands, to rejoice with you in good times, and to hug you in sorrowful times. We need to see you while we're speaking. I'm looking now into a little tiny hole in this screen that constitutes the camera, and I can't see you. It's not enough for rabbis or for any public speakers. We need to look into your eyes. We need to see how we're doing. We need to glean the responses, your body language, and all of that makes a difference. All of that actually determines what we say and how we say it. And so for me, it's no replacement to do online, and let nobody have any illusions. Synagogues need to be face to face. We are not online enterprises. There's actually a passage in the Talmud that comes right out and asks, who even needs a rabbi? That kind of feeds our rabbinic discomfort and lack of complete confidence in the viability of what we're doing. It goes all the way back to the Talmud. There's a whole page discussing the role of rabbis and how they're greeted by congregants and members of the community. And then they come right out and say, who even needs a rabbi? After all, what good do they bring into the world? They don't invent things. They don't fix things. They don't grow things. All they do is tell us stuff that's already written in the Torah that we can actually look up ourselves. Now, if you're interested in the conclusion of the rabbis as to what happens to these people who ask, what good are rabbis anyway? You'll have to study that with me and ask me when we get together, and I'll go over that page of Talmud with you. But the bottom line, I'll share with you in brief the bottom line. Nothing good happens to those people who question the viability and the relevance of rabbis. But then again, remember, it was rabbis who wrote the Talmud in the first place, trying to sum up their feelings. And perhaps, I don't know, to justify the need for rabbis going back thousands of years. The sages pronounce, happy is the one who is privileged to be a receptacle for Torah. Torah brings the day of redemption closer. And that's how I feel. I feel it's a privilege to be a teacher of Torah. And I also feel that in some way that I cannot fully articulate or explain, that it does bring the day of redemption closer. And because of this, and because of our need to communicate with you directly, physically, in the manner of Jewish tradition, face to face, through physical embrace and physical interaction, we're not only dreaming of the day that we can all return, we are actively planning for it. Part of the heaviness that you're feeling as individuals is there is so much uncertainty. We don't know how long we're going to be in this discipline. We don't know when this virus will end. We don't know whether there'll be a second wave in the fall. We don't know any of this. You don't know any of this. And so it would be one thing if we were told, you know what, 4 months of social isolation and so on, and then we can do the following, and you'll be in this new discipline when the time arrives. But nobody can tell you that. Even the experts don't know. So that's part of the heaviness that you're feeling in terms of day after day after day enduring this crisis. Imagine how difficult it is for institutions to plan, because we don't know anything, and yet we need to plan for what we hope will be the return of hundreds and even thousands of people. So we don't really know enough to make concrete plans. Nonetheless, I want to share with you our thinking at this point in time. We will not reopen even a day before the authorities tell us that it's part of the overall plan in New York City to reopen. But I want to clarify, we will not reopen even a day later than the authorities tell us it's part of the plan to reopen. And to give you a broad overview of our thinking, let me state the following points. Number one, first, we're establishing an advisory group of medical professionals, scientists in our congregation, representatives of the various population centers of our congregation, to form together this advisory group that will advise us on all of the details of how to reopen when it is safe, or safer at least, to reopen, and they'll accompany all the decisions that we make. Second, we're making plans to reopen the schools, the nursery school and the religious school in the fall, subject, of course, to the guidelines of the state and of the city. If New York City schools are still closed, we'll be closed as well. But if New York City schools are open, we'll be opening under the same safety precautions that the school population is living under. Third, we have so many simchas in the fall. We deferred 14 b'nai mitzvahs, all the b'nai mitzvah that were scheduled in the fall, in the spring, we deferred to the fall. And we hope and expect that we will be able to celebrate those b'nai mitzvah in the sanctuary. I don't know for sure, either do you. The experts don't even know. But we hope and expect and are planning for a physical face-to-face celebration of b'nai mitzvah. The way we expect to do that is there might be social distancing regulations, like not more than a certain number of people in one place at one time, or those people who are in one place at one time are separated by a certain distance requirement, or both. But remember, we have a 900-seat sanctuary, and assuming that people are able to congregate together in the fall, we will be able to implement those social distancing requirements and still have joyous and meaningful celebrations. Fourth, goes without saying, if we're able to celebrate B'nai Mitzvah in the sanctuary, then we will also be able to celebrate High Holy Days in the sanctuary, albeit under those social distancing guidelines. And we are making plans already to do that. We will specify that in more detail for you as the weeks and months unfold. We're looking at additional space to accommodate yet another group of people who will be practicing social distancing. But under all circumstances, even if we are unable to congregate as a group, which I hope and expect will not be the case, even then, it goes without saying, of course, we will be streaming our services live for those who will not be physically present. Fifth, we have begun and we will continue to clean like crazy. We've hired additional staff to do that before we close down the building, and we will re-engage them when people come back into the building. There will be deep cleaning going around the building at all times. And sixth, we will continue to urge our high-risk congregants, those who are at higher risk, either because of their age or pre-existing conditions. We will continue to urge them not to take undue risks. And it's perfectly acceptable and fine if they do not feel comfortable in re-engaging in a crowd. We kind of expect that, and we will take special measures to reach those people as well. And part of the reason that I feel this urgency to return to physical interaction is contained in the Talmudic passage that I spoke about earlier. I fear that unlike in previous eras of Jewish history, nowadays, all too many Jews ask that question in all seriousness. It was probably a debatable issue for the rabbis, but today, all too many Jews ask, why rabbis in the first place? What's the use of rabbis? Who needs rabbis? And my answer to you is, there is no Jewish continuity without synagogues, and there are no synagogues without rabbis. And I'm worried that modern Jews will not affirm the centrality and the importance of synagogues as vigorously as they did before the pandemic. I worry about that. And thus will not be willing to invest in synagogues as they were before. And I don't want you to get used to operating without synagogues, at least in a physical dimension, face to face. It's not good for you. It's not good for your Jewish health. It's not good for the Jewish health of your families. It has very deleterious consequences for the long-term health and viability of the American Jewish community. And for that reason, I urgently yearn for the day when we can reopen safely and we can see you face to face and do all of the things that synagogues do personally rather than online. And on that very page of Talmud, the sages assert, anyone who encourages, who supports, who funds the study of Torah introduces peace in the heavens above and on the earth below. Torah study brings the day of redemption closer. Amen to that.